everybody. It is episode 72 here on Hawaii Football Now. Second episode of the new year, and there is no shortage of things to talk about. Jordan Helly, Hunter Hughes with you. The postseason barrels on, and a fun show lined up for you. We don't have a guest, but we've got it was kind of a big news week last week. We'll get into that here in just a second. We record this Wednesday morning, 7 a.m. Hawaii time, set to release this tomorrow, as usual, on Thursday. That'll be January 12th. As we kind of already hit the midway point of the opening month of 2023. And as part of our opening drive, our vow to you is that we aim to have a show maybe half as good as Georgia's performance on Monday night in the national championship game, like a quarter as good, because I think that would set the bar pretty darn high in their, they went 65-7 against TCU. I thought, folks were going to lose count at that, but Hunter, before we get into the UH news, we were optimistic. TCU, former WAC brethren of Hawaii, not that long ago, and it didn't go well for the Horned Frogs, and Georgia just seems to be the new Bama as it is, where they just look unstoppable.
Yeah, it was put on display the difference of a national championship contender and a team that could rally together to win some games and squeak their way into the college football playoff, thus further exposing the four-team playoff and the error that still exists, or the holes, I should say, in that model, to not have a chance to see Alabama and Tennessee get a chance at this national title with how good they were playing earlier in the year. Obviously, I wanted to kind of bring this up, Jordan, because it's caused a lot of controversy with that pummeling in the national championship. Did TCU deserve to be there? Everything is against the College Football Playoff Committee for making this happen. Like, how could they allow this to happen? Well, TCU hung a number on Michigan, the number 2 team, the undefeated team in the entire, the only other undefeated team in the entire country. They played outstanding against the Wolverines and earned their right to that national championship game. The CFP did not beat Michigan. TCU did. So in some ways, they did earn their chance to play in that game. It's just, it's unfortunate to see the deck just so off in Georgia's favor.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I think, the folks that are like, TCU didn't belong there. It's kind of a farce. It's bad for college football. Like, no. They had, I thought, the third best resume in the country. I thought they deserved to be in it. And as you pointed out, this wasn't the semifinal. It wasn't like they got waxed in the semifinals. Like, oh yeah, maybe they weren't quite in the same tier, right? No, they won a game to get here. They obviously had won 12 games to get into the Big 12 championship game, but they won a playoff game against the number 2 ranked team, a previously undefeated team in the country, and earned their spot in the championship game. It did not go well. I think it goes to show what kind of level Georgia is at. And when they play at their best on a given day, there aren't a whole lot of teams that can really even hang with them. I think Ohio State, we saw, obviously pushed them and nearly beat Georgia, and maybe was a little more on their par than TCU, but they had their opportunities. And so, yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think getting Cinderella, if you will, to the championship game isn't bad for the sport. It just didn't go well on the day. We've seen blowouts in championship games before in different sports. And
Alabama lost twice. People being upset with them not getting the bid. Well, they didn't earn their right. They lost twice. So I don't know.
That plays out. Everybody's got opportunities, right? You could say that. And look, I will say, I think it does sort of solidify the notion that the SEC and the Big Ten are just head and shoulders above everybody else right now. And I think will continue to be so with the defection of Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, with USC, UCLA going to the Big Ten. Like, I do think those two conferences have created a little bit of separation from everybody else. Don't get me wrong. But I didn't see anything wrong with TCU being there. They weren't those interceptions and the fumble in the first half were pretty bad. And against Georgia, you got to play perfect. And next thing you know, the snowball effect is on, and off they were. And I just love the fact, as we sort of tie this back in, that there were the Hawaii fans. They're like, Hawaii did better against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in 2008, New Year's Day, right? That 07 team. And I would just say, well, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. 41-10 against the team that, was pretty darn loaded themselves with Stafford and Moreno and Atkins and those guys. Yeah, it went a little bit better than 65-7. Little different scenario, but I just love that there were the Hawaii fans that kind of snuck that in there, because why the heck not? Why not? Bring it up.
We'll take right? The dub any way we can.
I liked I saw it on Twitter, and my apologies if you are a listener of the show and this was you who tweeted it out, because I forgot to write it down. But I like the tweet that said time to put in Gronky at like halftime. And I just thought that was hilarious. As a Hawaii football fan, and only a certain group of people, I think, would have even known who the heck Tyler Gronky was, and would have gotten that joke as that went. So yeah, congrats to Georgia. They're the class of college football, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. As long as Kirby Smart is there, that thing's going to keep rolling. And now everybody's sort of playing catch up to them, kind of the way that everybody is playing catch up to Bama for all those years. I don't think he's quite Saban yet, and he has won 7 titles, but he's well on his way. And that Georgia program is scary. All right, before we get into the game time, I want to remind you that Hawaii Football Now is brought to you by Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. Originally opened in 1936 as a credit union for educators, Hawaii USA has inspired a culture of giving that is rooted in education and has since become Hawaii's largest credit union and expanded to other areas of community need that impact financial health, including healthcare, housing, and hunger. To learn more, please visit hawaiiusafcu.com. Big mahalo to our other sponsor, Spectrum Mobile, as well, as we get going into the game time here on episode 72. We mentioned it was a big news week for Hawaii locally, right? And every time we think that things are going to slow down, things are going to be a little quiet during the off season here, what are Hunter and I going to talk about? Oh, don't worry. The University of Hawaii football program never disappoints. Last week alone, David Matlin, University of Hawaii athletics director, announced his retirement come June. He will see out the school year basically, and then retire at the end of the academic year. And then Timmy Chang, basically declaring that the run and shoot is fully back. Something that we had maybe anticipated, something that we have talked about at length in this show. But now he is on the record as saying such, as reported by Stephen Tsai in the Honolulu Star Advertiser, last week. So we'll kind of get into both of those topics. We'll start off, I think, with the run and shoot news, and then get into David Matlin's announcement probably in the second half. We'll see how long this takes us as we get going here on episode 72. So Hunter, before we get into some of the comments made by Coach Chang, some of the details of what this could look like, just surface level, I know folks will be interested in some of the minutia here, but just like the headline, right? Like Timmy Chang, back to the run and shoot, you put it on a bumper sticker, whatever, your initial reaction to hearing that it is basically full go on the run and shoot here in 2023.
Elated, stoked, on fire. I'm trying to think of another dumb catchphrase. We've kind of called it on this show for the last few months now, that in lieu of not having an identity this past season, and it kind of bit us in the butt, we kind of presumed, hoped that it was making room for what Timmy was wanting to do, which was officially commit to the run and shoot. And we also talked about that might have been a reason why we didn't go super heavy with recruiting quarterbacks in this early signing period, was doubling down and educating the guys in the locker room, in that QB room that we have right now. Takes a lot of patience, a lot of hands-on teaching from a coach to a player to shift their mind to be able to run the run and shoot. And Jordan, it just fits our identity. It fits who we are. It fits the whole marketing pitch that we try to sell to recruits to get them to come here. Again, we're not battling against the 4 or 5-star guys that go to University of Alabama, Georgia, the SEC. We're trying to compete with the guys that would go to other Mountain West schools. And so what sort of a marketing pitch do we put together that they would want to come and play football in Hawaii? And a big answer to that is the run and shoot. So I'm super stoked that they've officially decided and committed that that's going to be our identity.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, something that at the very least gets people excited. Like, I think Hawaii fans will instantly perk up, right? Like those that are familiar with the program, those that have watched this program for decades, those that watched Timmy Chang quarterback this program, like that's what they associate with for the last 25 years. And there have been periods of time throughout those basically 25 years that Hawaii wasn't necessarily running the run and shoot. We are aware of that, but I don't think it has ever been far from the minds of fans. I don't think it's ever really been far from the minds of alums in this program, and there has been a lot of overlap from team to team, right? Even some of the Norm Chow era, you had guys that were there under McMacken, even into the Todd Graham era. Obviously, there was overlap of guys from the Rolo era, whether they were players or even some of the assistant coaches, more so on the defensive side of the football. But there's always sort of, tentacles, prongs from one era to the other that has more or less had some sort of run and shoot DNA existing really right for the last quarter century. And bringing back Timmy Chang, you had to think that, hey, that might be part of the influence. And we saw it a little bit last year, and hey, it wasn't going to be, just wrinkles of it, wasn't going to be a full out commitment. This kind of parallels Nick Rolovich's tenure, right? In a way where he didn't start off running the run and shoot. Took him a couple of seasons and kind of, started to get personnel in there, while also, I think, seeing some of the results of trying to run some hybrids type stuff, which a lot of places attempt to do. And then he sort of rebranded things. And as we've talked about, it wasn't necessarily the traditional run and shoot. There was a lot of RPO elements. And I'd imagine that this won't be just, the pure Mouse Davis run and shoot that Timmy Chang puts out there. He's even talked about the fact that, he isn't opposed to tight ends being involved in this offense. But at the very least, it gives you options, instant excitement. I think it perks up fans. I think it gives you an identity to fall back on, as you point out. And so when you go into the living rooms of recruits, when a national broadcast team comes in and starts talking about the University of Hawaii, it will now be once again synonymous with the run and shoot. And people will know what you're talking about, and people will have an idea of what that looks like. They'll have an idea of Timmy Chang throwing the football around. They'll have an idea of an offense that looked like what it looked like when Colt Brennan was running it, right? When Bryant Moniz was lighting it up, when Cole McDonald and Chevin Cordero were doing their thing and putting up big numbers. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we know what this is supposed to look like. It's great. It's great for branding. Like, put it on T-shirts, put it on bumper stickers, put it on, merch, whatever it is. That is a big deal, right? Sell some product, bring in some revenue, get people excited. That's a big deal, I think. And I think that gives them an opportunity to further market the program, further sell the program to folks that spend their money, to folks that are young people looking to play college football, to young people that, come up growing up in the state of Hawaii as fans of the University of Hawaii and hopefully turn into high-level recruits, which we've seen year in and year out in the in the state. So I am all for it. You played in it, Hunter. I am a fan of it. And I think this makes a whole lot of sense, because at the end of the day, it kind of just fits, if the slipper fits,
that's right.
Go ahead and embrace it. Like this is what the University of Hawaii should be. We should be running some sort of unique offense that is clear, that is identifiable, and that is synonymous with, excitement, putting up some points. I love it.
Absolutely. And, if this is successful, and we're praying that it is, this will be the third time in UH's history that the run and shoot is a proven model to transform a program. When you see June do it, you saw Rolo bring it back after the Norm Chow era, and now you see Timmy Chang bringing it back after the whole Todd Graham fiasco for a couple of years. It's a proven model that in our history has worked really well for us. And, I think back to our conversation with our friend from the Las Vegas Sportsbook, and him talking about Hawaii always being the last game of the schedule, and people just looking to get action in that game from a gambling perspective, from a viewer's perspective. It's the last game on TV. I remember growing up flipping on ESPN late at night and Hawaii was still playing. We need to capture that attention with a high powered offense and make it really attractive and fun. Like, hey, I want to come play for those guys. That looks awesome. They score a ton of points. Rolo famously said, where would you rather spin footballs, in Boise, Idaho, or Honolulu, Hawaii? So, I mean, you're exactly right. It's part of who we are. And yeah, it fits. And I'm glad we've got the shoe on again.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I love that Rolo quote. The would you rather catch passes in paradise or stock block in the snow?
That's what it was. Yeah.
And it was just funny that he went to Pullman, Washington, and look, it was catching passes in the snow. It wasn't a whole lot of stock blocking in the snow. I thought that was great, but no, it was an awesome selling point, right? And so I'm with you, and I think that'll we'll kind of package that thought up that you had, because I think that sort of parlays into our second discussion today, which will focus on David Matlin, and you athletic director pending, and how do you take this program to another level and build on what has already been established, and I think that those conversations are all interrelated for sure. So how's it going to look? Basically, as reported in Stephen Tsai's article, Timmy's going to take over the play calling duties. Timmy Chang will be the play caller. And co-offensive coordinators Ian Shoemaker and Roman Sapolu will assist in crafting the game plan, is the verbiage used by Stephen Tsai in that article. And correct me if I'm wrong, Hunter, I don't believe Roman Sapolu was a co-offensive coordinator last year. I know he was the offensive line coach, and so I believe that is a change in title for him. And obviously you get an offensive line coach involved in the game planning, the play crafting. I would imagine that'll be a large portion of the run game with Roman Sapolu in there. And then, of course, Ian Shoemaker and all his experience as a play caller, as a crafter of an offense, they will still utilize his skill set, and it'll be kind of a collaborative effort. But ultimately, Timmy Chang will be the one taking over the play calling duty. So that is a lot more on his plate, right? I mean, as a head coach, you've got to keep track of everything else. You're the guy in charge. You're the general. You're the CEO. Game day, you're the manager. You've got to figure all this stuff out. And then he will also be taking on play calling duties. And it is something that has been done before. Don't get me wrong. Rolo did it. June did it. But it is quite a bit more that will be on Timmy's plate here going forward.
Very much so. It's not a small undertaking to completely reimagine an offense. It's easy for us as the media or the general public to just say, go back to the run and shoot, man. Put 60 points on the board. What are you doing? Well, that takes a lot of work to put that whole thing together. And you see right now with kind of restructuring, reorganizing of the coaching staff and responsibilities, we're trying to make do with what we have. And there were maybe some that wanted to change at OC, and I'm interested to see Coach Shoemaker's full potential still. Jordan, you and I were super hyped over him whenever we saw that hire with everything he did at Eastern Washington. I still think the ceiling is very high. with a guy like him and his football knowledge. We had him on the show, and I told you I wanted to keep my mouth shut. That dude knew way more about football than I could ever know. And it's cool to see Coach Timmy Chang still recognizing that and kind of bringing him along the ride to still make this thing successful. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, basically, Coach Chang saying in the article that he told Shoemaker that he'll see a lot of my blind spots and he'll think outside the box for me and not just the run and shoot box. He'll see problems coming. He'll have ideas because he's cut from a slightly different cloth, but has been very successful in having a high-powered offense. That's why I hired him, end quote. And so, yeah, I think, you want to try and maximize in the same way that you are looking to maximize your personnel on the field, right? You're trying to put players in the best position to succeed. You're trying to put players in the best position to help the team and maximize sort of your chess pieces out there. For Timmy, that's a lot, really the same thought process for his coaching staff. Like, you've got to figure out what the best, combination is, who's calling the plays, who's helping do what, making sure you've got guys working on things that will bring out the best in the group and put ultimately the team in the best position to score points and win games. And so it'll be kind of interesting to see how that dynamic works. How Coach Shoemaker kind of, blends, as Timmy pointed out, his outside the box viewpoint of things into this now, I think, run and shoot foundation, and how that all works out. We mentioned they could still incorporate a tight end. Timmy in the article saying basically he's not opposed to that. Guys that could line up in the slot, guys that could help out in the run game, kind of like we saw later on in the season, right? We saw a lot of Caleb Phillips lining up in the slot for this group. You think back to bigger slots like Greg Salas in years past. Yeah. There is a place for them in this offense, no doubt about it. But we'll see exactly what kind of commitment they put forth to recruiting tight ends, to bringing those guys in, those type of body types going forward. You remember, right, basically after the non-conference last year, and really it was kind of that last non-conference game against New Mexico State where they started talking a little bit more openly about, hey, we want to put in some concepts, right? At that point, it was just concepts. Like, we'll put in some run and shoot concepts, a few different pass route patterns here and there, a few different pass plays. They wanted to stretch the field a little more vertically. That was the conversation then. To varying degrees of success. I think we saw a bit more of that as the season went on. I think we saw a little bit more of what the identity that they had in mind in the UNLV game and the San Jose State game, even though they didn't put up as many points in the San Jose State game, in part because of drops. But you were starting to see it develop, and now they're going into it. Coach Chang saying the main focus is I want to go to the run and shoot. The playbook is about 70% done. I want to go to the run and shoot because historically we're good at it. That's what I know. That's the offense I've been in for a number of years at St. Louis and the University of Hawaii. That's what I grew up doing, and we're really, really good at it on the island. And so I think there's a few things there, right? His familiarity, obviously, as he pointed out, historically they've been good at it. We've already touched on that. And as you point out, we're really, really good at it on the island. That's the other part of it. Recruiting locally, like a lot of programs still run this stuff because it was in vogue after the University of Hawaii broke on, and with June, a lot of the high school programs, not just St. Louis, started doing a lot of this stuff. And you don't need big guys. You don't need huge receivers to excel in this offense. And Hawaii's got a lot of really athletic guys that maybe aren't, the biggest, fastest, strongest, because those recruits from the islands usually get scooped up by like Texas and Oregon and whatnot. But the next tier of guys at Hawaii, it's easier to insert them in an offense like this. And I think, I read that as Timmy sort of understanding that, and not that, and I think we saw that in this year's already, partially filled recruiting class. Like that is something that they acknowledge, they recognize, and are hoping to take advantage of.
Yeah. And, the obvious question from the general public is, are we putting ourselves in a corner with this offense? Teams are going to know what we run. There's plenty of film on the run and shoot. Well, the beautiful thing about this offense is you could run the same play and get 8 different results from it because every route has an option to it. And when it's at its peak, whenever it's flowing on all cylinders, the run and shoot is stinking hard to defend because you could set up, I don't want to get too football minded for our listeners out there, but a defense could show up in zone. And then even if they move to man, the receivers can change the route on the fly. And if they're in flow with the quarterback and they're all thinking the same thing, you literally can't stop it. So it is extremely exciting from a player's perspective. I could see, and we've been kind of predicting this with this open door policy with the transfer portal, Jordan. I could see us getting a bunch of guys who might have left the islands to go to other schools, coming back and being a part of something special brewing here on Oahu.
Yeah, I think, to your point, and we can get into this as we go throughout more of the offseason, and I'd love to actually, the intricacies of the run and shoot and how that all makes sense. But I do think, in terms of painting yourself into the corner, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily when you can really sell what you're doing, right? It's like, hey, look, for recruits, guys that went home and say, okay, we're coming back home. We're not really sure what the University of Hawaii is running offensively. They got kind of an idea, but we're not exactly sure how they're trying to attack. But if you're coming back to this offense, or you're signing on as a high school kid to play in this offense, it gives you a lot more certainty, and obviously excitement, because you've got to imagine that they're going to put the ball in the air quite a bit. We'll have a lot more to talk about with the run and shoot and getting into some of the intricacies and whatnot, because I do think that will be pretty interesting, and why this makes sense beyond just the surface level that I think I've mentioned here, that Hunter and I can get into, in the coming weeks as we go throughout. One other note that's been reported, spring practice, where obviously a lot of this install work will go in, opens up February 8th. So it's a bit earlier. Again, that's less than a month away now, in part because of scheduled work on the Ching complex and the grass practice fields that will be completed this summer. So with all the renovations, right, they're looking to expand the Ching complex. And so the 15 spring practices have been moved up a bit. And really, that's right after the traditional signing day, which I think is February 1st. So we should see some of this new look offense, or the rededicated run and shoot, the run and shoot reboot, whatever we're going to brand it as, pretty soon here. Like, it's less than a month away. And I think you had mentioned this a month or so ago, Hunter, that was kind of the rumbling, for a variety of reasons, that we could see a little bit earlier start to spring ball. So now they're going to get right back at it.
Yeah. And I actually, on the flight home just this past Friday, I was on the airplane with Jordan Johnson, one of the running backs, and we were just kind of talking shop on what that looks like from a training perspective, needing to get your body right to play football again. There usually is a 2, sometimes 3.5 month buffer from the end of the season to spring ball that the strength and conditioning staff uses to their advantage for recovery, for building up muscle, putting mass on again. And you treat spring much like a new season. So I'm curious how hard they're going to push these guys, just from a personnel standpoint. I'm most intrigued with that, because this is highly unusual to run spring camp this early in February. But hey, this coaching staff has done a lot of things new and different, and we're here for it. So see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see them come back that quickly, and how that, hopefully works out to their advantage, as kind of build a little momentum, and keep that going throughout the off season. All right, that'll do it for the first half. We'll come back after halftime. We'll get into the impact and some of the future ramifications of David Matlin's announcing his retirement effective June 2nd. Second half coming up right after this.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second half here on episode 72 of Hawaii Football Now. Hunter and Jordan back with you. We're talking run and shoot in the first half. We're talking a little off the field news as the University of Hawaii athletic director David Matlin announced last week, Wednesday, that he is retiring from the university effective June 2nd, 2023. So again, he'll basically see out the academic year and then will step away early June of this season. You remember he was hired March of 2015. So he'll basically have spent just over 8 years on the job. And I think it's now, or will be at the time he leaves, like the third or fourth longest tenured athletic director in University of Hawaii athletics history. This is big news, obviously, because he is the guy that is, responsible for the hiring and firing of head coaches. And that has come with a lot of fanfare, a lot of attention, a lot of consternation at times, a lot of comment from the public, good and bad, obviously, right? And nobody's going to nail it 100% of the time. But from a football standpoint, those are obviously the most high-profile hires. And he has hired 3 guys in his 8 years, right? And fired one of them, not of those 3, but fired a coach during his tenure, right? It was not long after he got hired that he relieved Norm Chow of his duties. That was one of his big initial decisions. One I think ultimately was the right decision, as the program was not going in an upward trend. Ultimately hires Nick Rolovich. That worked out pretty well, right? As that team in Rolo's final year wins 10 games, goes to the Mountain West Championship game, a couple of bowl wins during Rolo's tenure. Rolo leaves to go to Washington State. He hires Todd Graham. We've talked about at length about the hiring, the tenure, and then the ultimate resignation of Todd Graham, right? Remember, he chose to step away. That wasn't necessarily a decision handed down by Matlin or other administrators. And then he ultimately hired Timmy Chang. That was a whole deal as well, because that came on the heels of June Jones saying he was offered the job, but the terms were unacceptable to him. The reports were that Matlin wanted a lot of control in the hiring of staff for whoever the head coach was going to be. June ultimately scoffed at the offer. The hire ends up being Timmy Chang. There have been reports of, Matlin having a large say in the hiring of the current staff as well. But Timmy in place, I think, has done a lot of positive things, right? The goal is to win more football games on the field next year. But I mean, those are big, high profile hires. And I think ultimately he'll be judged on how those play out. And I think how Timmy Chang sort of plays out here. He hired 16 total head coaches in his 8 years, 13 of which were first-time Division I head coaches. That's the most by any athletic director in school history, the 16 head coaches. He's the only AD, as we mentioned, to hire 3 coaches. He also hired Aran Ganat. He hired Robin Amo. He hired Rich Hill after not choosing to retain Mike Trapasso. I think, those obviously among the high profile programs as well, especially when you're talking about Wahine volleyball, right? And to hire the replacement for Dave Shoji. Yeah. That was no easy task. And I think he's done did a really good job in bringing on Robin, because I think she's done a terrific job since taking over for Dave. Aran Ganat, right? He's taken them to the NCAA tournament. He's got them off to a great start again this year. Rich Hill, a lot of excitement after a positive first year there. And so there's more to it, obviously, when you talk about fundraising facilities and things like that. And we'll get into the stadium situation and COVID and a lot of things that were working against him. But I think what will pop out to people, obviously, is the coaching hirings, right? Like that's what is sort of front of mind. That's sort of the front porch of an athletic director's resume in a lot of ways. And from a football standpoint, right? You're hoping that they find success with Timmy Chang, kind of like they did with Nick Rolovich.
Yeah, and I think most recently in the minds of all of our faithful listeners, the big blemish was the June Jones fake hiring fiasco of last winter, of we're going to bring him in. And then there was all this Twitter battling going on. Matlin sent out a representative, and the guy did not speak well of June. That was tough. That was tough to watch. Just from an alumni perspective, that one could have been handled a little bit better, in my mind. Obviously, everything that went down with the Todd Graham era could have maybe been handled better at certain times. But yeah, when you look at the resume here, and the one that's really highlighting to me, Jordan, is the men's basketball situation with hiring Eran Ganat. People forget the whole Gib Arnold fiasco with NCAA recruiting violations, and the sanctions put on by the NCAA over our basketball team. That was a hard thing to navigate. And now with the success of our basketball team now, just a few years later, it's cool to see that ship kind of righted. You mentioned Robin Amo taking over for the legend, the most famous coach probably in the history of all of University of Hawaii, Coach David Shoji. That's a tough task as well, to find the right fit for that and retain our avid Wahine volleyball fan base. It was not an easy task for Mr. Matlin.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, right? Because when you pull the onion back a little bit, like there were some difficult tasks put in front of David Matlin, right? And the NCAA sanctions coming off of the Gib Arnold era, and finding the right guy to kind of steer that forward. And a lot of these coaches that he has hired have done a really good job, like, grade point averages and graduation rates, this according to the university. 4 student athletes have hit all-time highs under Matlin's tenure. Obviously, men's volleyball has been the flagship program. They've been the best program in the country for the last 4 years, and they're coming off of back-to-back national championships. And so whatever you want to say about David Matlin's tenure, like, we don't win national championships. That's not something the University of Hawaii does on a regular basis. The women's volleyball program, obviously, with 4, big deal. Men's volleyball, early 2000s, I still count it, even though the NCAA stripped us of it, and made us take down the banner. But to win back-to-back national championships, and I don't care what sport, that's a big deal. So I think that is a huge feather in David Matlin's cap. Some of the other numbers that were put out in the University of Hawaii press release: 30 teams participated in a national postseason competition during Matlin's 7+ years. Football team was invited to 5 bowl games, which, again, over the course of its history, it didn't happen a whole lot. And I get it, there are way more bowls now than there were, say 2002, right, where Hawaii goes 9-3 and doesn't go to a bowl game. But that's big. That's big for the growth of the program. It's big for revenue. It's big for keeping the Hawaii Bowl here in Hawaii. 14 different teams won a conference.
Yeah, sorry. When we won the
go ahead.
2016 Hawaii Bowl, that was the first bowl win in 10 years for the football program. That was a big deal at the time.
Yeah, and they've won a couple of bowl games since then, right? Winning the another Hawaii Bowl against BYU. And say whatever you will about the Todd Graham era, they won a bowl game on the continent for the first time since the Holiday Bowl, when they went to Frisco and won the New Mexico Bowl, right, in Texas, during that weird, wonky COVID year. 19 teams captured conference tournament crowns, 14 teams won conference titles. And again, the financial situation is never easy, right? And I think really dictates in a lot of ways who he can hire, the candidates that are afforded to him. And so I fully acknowledge that, right? A lot of facilities upgrades during his time, right? You think of the basketball practice facilities, think of volleyball, oversaw $80 million in facility upgrades, impacting nearly all of the University of Hawaii's 21 sports programs. 21 sports programs, by the way, fairly decent size athletic program, even bigger than some Power 5 schools. And so no easy task there. We're also fundraising $45 million over the last 7 years of his tenure. Reading a quote here from the press release, Matlin saying, quote, "It's been an honor to serve as the University of Hawaii Athletics Director for the past 7.5 years. this has been more than a job for me. It's been the opportunity of a lifetime to work with some incredible people, our student athletes, coaches, staff, university leadership, and of course, our fans. And I thank you all for the passion and dedication that each and every one of you give to our program every day. It's with deep appreciation that I can say that I'm ready to retire as athletics director and pass the torch on to the next UHAD when I complete my 8-year term on June 2nd, 2023. It's such a difficult job. Like, it really is, and have I agreed with every decision that David Matlin has made? No, not at all. And I think, especially with some of the football stuff here as of late, but I fully acknowledge, like, he has done a really good job with surviving the Aloha Stadium situation, right? And getting some capital improvement stuff done way faster than I think most state administrators, any department, wherever, have gotten, right? With retrofitting Ching, with now getting Ching to be even boosted up a little bit more, not wasting any time there, sort of, twiddling his thumbs while the Aloha Stadium situation gets figured out, which is still undecided, right? I think he deserves a huge amount of credit for that. Like, they were homeless, right? And they were going to be without a place to play, and he figured it out pretty quickly. It did that, and throughout COVID, right? Sort of just navigating where in a place that was as hard as any to really make work, right? And I'm not saying that the restrictions weren't warranted, like safety came first, but playing in empty stadiums and making that work, survive, or keeping this program viable where they didn't have the ticket revenue, they weren't able to sell concessions or drinks or food for most of the 2021 season, right? It was tough going, and so for him to kind of just keep this program afloat, I think he deserves a ton of credit there. And I think to kind of reiterate, the figuring out the Ching situation on the fly, short notice, with not a whole lot of money to work with, is pretty admirable. It really is.
Yeah. And, specifically with football, this is a football podcast. That last year of Norm Chow's era, there was even rumors that they were going to can the football program, to see, immediately in his hire, Rolo's surge, and in just a couple years time, a complete rejuvenation of our football program. The uniqueness of what has been achieved with the TC Ching day game, a game day environment down there, and kind of been retrofitted and done in a very quick manner. That was an extremely difficult task, and my job as sideline reporter has afforded me some conversations with Mr. Matlin that maybe others aren't privy to, and it's been interesting to just have some talks with him, and wanted to know what the feeling was with the team and the general public on the hiring of Coach Timmy Chang. And I feel like, at least thus far, he got one right as he exited the stage. So again, it's a difficult task. I'm a big fan of him, just from personal reasons. He's a good friend, and I wish him nothing but the best in retirement.
Yeah, I think Hawaii definitely benefited from his business acumen, right?
Definitely.
His time working in the business world, his time running the Diamond Head, his time running the Hawaii Bowl. He had to negotiate a couple of media deals, TV, radio. I think there's opportunity for growth in both of those aspects going forward. And obviously, ESPN Honolulu is the radio broadcast rights holder. I think fair to mention that. But his partnerships with Hawaiian Airlines, the Hawaii Tourism Authority, to help reduce travel costs, to bring in some additional funds, just being creative, right? You got to be in that position in terms of finances. And I think he did a very admirable job when it came to that. And one other thing that I wanted to mention before we kind of move on here, he was also on the men's volleyball committee, which is part of the selection committee, and how much they've grown the game and how much the game has grown over, if you time that up, right, with his last 7 years and whatnot. the number of schools that have added volleyball, the University of Hawaii's willingness to go on the road and play in places that don't traditionally play men's volleyball to help grow the game. The Carolinas, the South, what was it, Texas last year. And I know David Matlin has been very supportive of that and a big proponent of that. And so for a sport that Hawaii has been the class of, I think he has played a pretty big role in growing that thing nationally and getting it the recognition and respect that it deserves. So I did want to mention that as well for Matlin here. We'll have chances, and we'd love to hear from you, the listeners. Feel free to drop us a comment or line as to who you think maybe might be the next guy or lady, right? The next person.
Right.
I definitely don't want to close that off or make it seem like that. Who the next athletic director could, should be, who you want, who you think it'll be. Drop us a line. Drop any name in there. We'll see. And we'll get into that a little bit next week. We'll kind of talk about the future beyond the David Matlin tenure as well. So congrats to David. Well deserved. He said he's not retiring or anything like that, but well deserved next phase of his life. Right. And obviously retiring from the position, but I think he'll still be involved. Right. He'll be doing something. It'll be fun to see kind of where he heads next. All right. A little 2-minute drill to wrap things up here on episode 72. Some transfer news. Safety Tiger Peterson has entered the portal on his way out of the University of Hawaii. Linebacker Riley Wilson was already in there. He's going to Montana. He announced that he will sign on with the FCS program out of Missoula. Congrats to South Dakota State, by the way, winning the FCS national championship over the weekend, defeating North Dakota State. That's a big win for the Jackrabbits there. A couple of former University of Hawaii players who were in the portal. Nick Mardner is going to Auburn. So he just continues this upward trajectory. Cincinnati done. And now to the SEC, man. He's going to play for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And interestingly enough, former Hugh Freeze player Dede Hunter right at Liberty. I think he entered the portal. I know at one point he announced that he was looking to transfer. I don't know if he officially entered the portal, via the website, but he is staying at Liberty, I believe, at last check via his Twitter. So Dede Hunter and Nick Marner will have played for Hugh Freeze after leaving the University of Hawaii. How interesting is that? Any thoughts on the Tiger Peterson or Riley Wilson news? I don't think it's terribly surprising. Both of those guys were a little further down the depth chart and looking for other opportunities. I don't blame them. I also don't think it's, some huge news, as those are positions that are kind of loaded right now. And if, you think that, playing time is going to be hard to come by, I get it.
Totally. And with how many guys we've recruited on the defensive side of the football, this is just to be expected. And so it's almost as if the coaching staff is hedging their bets that this is going to happen every year. Guys are going to leave the program, to not be surprised when it does, but be prepared for when it does. The other one in this 2-minute drill, Jordan, Corey Bethley declared for the NFL draft from
That's right. Yeah.
Arizona State. So nothing but the best for him. One of the best nickel safeties we've had in a long time. So I'm very curious to see how he does, because again, that helps us with our recruiting pitches.
Yeah, for sure. And Bethley, man, I'm excited. There are a lot of opportunities now on the professional level, but hopefully the NFL maybe is in the cards for our guy Corey Bethley. 91 tackles, I think, this past season at Arizona State. So he was still very, very productive for a Sun Devil program that didn't quite live up to expectations this past season. All right, as we wrap things up, a big mahalo to our sponsors, Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USA FCU, Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union, here on episode 72. But before we sign off, we got to send a big mahalo one to the listeners. As always, again, drop us a line. And our guy, Jiren Kobashigawa, our producer, our confidant, our, just all around good guy. He apparently is leaving us, Hunter. And I am one not to stand for it. We are excited about the future. We are excited about working with some new folks, our guy Jonathan and whatnot. But Jiren, we are saddened to hear that he won't be with us on every episode. He'll probably pop in now and then. So I don't know if you're listening, Jiren, or if you can like pop on your camera, but I feel like we should give you your due, because without Jiren, this would be way worse than it already is. We would not be getting on the air. We didn't give Jiren a heads up. Sometimes he's like in a suit, working his real job. Sometimes he's not, and it's hoodie o'clock here in the morning. So we just wanted to say thanks, Jiren, because again, he's kept us out of the ditch. He's kept us on. He's had to edit things that were recorded like over multiple weeks. He's gotten a slew of guests for us over the history of this podcast. Basically all of the hard work. Hunter and I just show up and we just BS for like an hour. And Jiren gets to do all of the hard lifting, heavy lifting behind the scenes. So Jiren, we appreciate you, my man. Don't go too far, and we'll probably still bother you quite often.
No, it's been a ton of fun with you guys, and I appreciate everything you guys do for ESPN Honolulu and for this podcast. And you didn't tell me that I was gonna be making the guest appearance. I know you guys been talking.
Yeah, because you probably would have run away and like not come back until we stopped recording.
I mean, I've been delaying it ever since. I think we've been talking about it for a couple of months now. It's like we're gonna bring Jiren on, but
yeah,
so I wasn't.
And so if this was a negotiating tactic, Jiren, you could stay. We'll put you on every week if you want.
Absolutely, man. We'll
I'll just join back on as a guest. Yeah.
And no need hair and makeup. You look great already, bro. Roll out of bed. That's the moneymaker right there.
It's exactly what I did, actually.
Yeah, that's why we're just jealous of you all the time, Jiren. Not only are you multi-skilled, in a quality baseball player, right? Is the men's league still going? What's the latest?
Yeah, the men's league is going right now. Well, this is off topic from football, but there's a league called AJA where it's a little bit more competitive than our usual Sunday league.
Yep.
But it's still good fun.
Okay, I like it. Yeah. So any fans of Jiren out there, just go like down to Alawai, and Jiren might be playing some baseball as throughout the days in this latest AJA season. But no, Jiren, thanks a lot, man. I think I echo some of the sentiments of Hunter. So Hunter, I don't know if you wanted to say anything before we wrap up the episode, and maybe convince Jiren to just hang around a little longer.
I feel like this little family is getting broken up, bro. Like, oh my goodness.
It's like one of the longest relationships I've had in my life.
Man, for those listening at home, he decided to tell us at like 6:58 this morning. So that was fun waking up to that news. Reliving a divorce all over again. Thanks, Jiren. Yeah, we're stoked for you, man. Whatever you do, you're gonna do great. And sad to see you go.
Yeah, so big thanks to our guy Jiren. He'll still be involved with some ESPN Honolulu projects. You probably aren't aware, but a lot of the content that you see on the digital platforms, that's all Jiren. And again, really talented dudes. Jiren, we appreciate you, my man. We appreciate all the listeners. Big mahalo again to Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. That'll do it for us on episode 72. We'll see you next week, maybe without Jiren. Jiren, don't go.
Can I do the signature Hunter Shaka to end the episode?
Yeah, there we go. That's how we end it. The signature Hunter Shaka. We'll see everybody next week. Aloha.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helly and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.